Good afternoon, friends. Another word of Gord and some more wisdom from Maitreya. Let me get right into this. It's slightly longer than usual. Channeled a couple of years ago. It's called On Atheism and Fanaticism. The expressions known as atheism and fanaticism have existed on the planet in one form or another for millennia. Ignorant and anxious men have always gathered to seek sustenance from mere numbers, whatever their shade of faith or doubt. The desire to shout one's belief from the rooftops and enforce it on others has never been far from center stage. In the modern world, the twin thrusts of absolute denial of any divinity but the ingenious mind of man and determined insistence on literal interpretation of ancient sacred texts constantly vie for control of, if not the world, then at least their market share of interested subscribers. The masters are well aware of these trends, both in their historical and contemporary modes, and take them into account in all our encouraging and moderating activities. They are, of course, twin expressions of the same impulse, translated by astral bodies easily susceptible to overexcitement, and require much the same treatment, which might be termed moderation in devotion. Whatever your cause, we suggest tolerance in its propagation. As capitalism is supposed to be laissez-faire in its operation, allowing each individual to be his own entrepreneur, so too should belief systems recognize each other's inalienable right to expression. Each must be free to enable their activity and work out their destinies. Whether you believe in God, the Godhead, the radiant void, souls shepherding themselves through sentience, or the mystery of physicality as gradually exposed by man's analytical ingenuity, revealing causes tinier and more evanescent than their effects, we would encourage you to respect the choices of others repugnant to your oh-so-precious position. The planet, and indeed the solar system, is large enough to encompass and nurture all points of view without placing any in the shade. Insisting on the blind ignorance of others and acting aggressively upon one's righteous declarations has been the way of history. And while it is not something we would ever have encouraged, it is one of the many manifestations of intolerance we have learned to live with as we silently shepherd our younger siblings into the daunting maturity they deny and run from. Of course, the sheep to the slaughter scenario they secretly fear is, in reality, a trainees to the transformation program, where men transcend their form and function and inherit a freedom they barely suspected existed. The wise among you know that all paths, if followed to their fruition, lead to the same place, a platform of achievement where previous efforts seem more of a letting go than an adding to, and that the gradual and often painful disrobing of the ego leads only to the revealing of the soul's unsupported original radiance. But for those who have not yet reached that level of wisdom, the path chosen is an ego expression and must be loudly championed and aggressively protected from those who would profane its purity. Prophets, and I have overshadowed my share in this planet's progress, rarely partition the world into the faithful and the faithless. It is only their more determined disciples who, in the race to shine more brightly in the Master's light than the others, prosecute such divisions. In such a manner do the opposing teams arise. That the debate over the Prophet's true intentions would inevitably lead to sects, denominations, and the all too familiar schisms of history was expected by us. In the development of the religious expression in man, we had come to see it as unavoidable. In its less evolved expression, the love of God, whatever the manifestation, tends to feed the prideful ego more than the joyful soul. And it is such prideful egos who, tiring of the seemingly unsupportable claims of the fanatic, turn in great relief to the ideology of denial, in which all the workings of spirits are at best convenient myths, and often the complete illusions of frantic children lost in a fog of their own fears. How much more adult it is, they say, to face death in the face and treat each other with kindness and respect, without the threat of damnation. Such souls are not to be mocked, as the usurpation of true religious feeling by those who would legislate faith through fear has insulted their real and unimpeachable intelligence. Let us instead see atheism as the inevitable outgrowth of man's growing mental function, which rightly and quickly learns to ridicule superstition, but unfortunately all too often fails to complete the leap from instinctual response to intuitive knowing, and leaves the practitioner with only the endlessly analyzable material world as his reward. And as subtly complex as the ever-expanding subdivisions which scientific analysis continually unfolds for the hungry curiosity of the expert intellectual, such examination will never reveal the prime source of all manifestation, nor the lengthy stepping down process which gradually enables hyper-rapid vibration to slow down long enough to compose the matter men seek to understand. Just as the brain, regardless of how it is stimulated, broken down, or otherwise pickled in experimentation, will never be revealed as the generator of consciousness, so too the physical plane, however cleverly categorized into its component parts, will never reveal the ultimate source of its creation and maintenance. Only the surrender to the indefensible and irreducible intuitive leap will lead the bearer through the dark territory of doubt and the catcalls of mockery to the inner certainties of the knowing self. Learning to thrive in the complete lack of applause is an integral part of the true seeker's journey. Of course, that very surrender is the last thing a proud intellectual cares to embrace. Seeing the braying certainty of the fanatic everywhere but in his own backyard of cloistered elites and self-serving jargon, he firmly believes, like all the righteous throughout history, in the superiority of his cause, and seeks to establish a sane and ordered bridgehead into the swamps of hysterical superstition. His position is analogous to that of the passionate devotee of the long-gone prophet, who, convinced in the chaotic sinfulness of modern society, seek to re-establish an imagined golden age where men were pious and God's ways were followed without question. Both the rational atheist and the devoted believer, tagged as fanatic, are outgrowths of the same misplaced emphasis in matters of faith. If religions, and the men who seek to lead them, espoused, and more importantly practiced, tolerance and the unconditional love for all those choosing to follow the diverging paths that the free will mandate of this planetary situation inevitably throws up into man's consciousness, neither atheism nor fanaticism would have had the fertile soil required for the growth of their expression. Religions, despite the endless guidance offered by prophets, messiahs, and the inevitable guidance of a master such as I, have repeatedly chosen the lesser path of centralized power and control through fear, and as such are entirely responsible for the growths of these two disruptive expressions. And only a commitment to those qualities already stated will alleviate the threat posed by such determined antagonists, as they vie for both the control of the elites and the masses. For only those on a tight leash seek to scamper and bolt. Well, I managed to get that in under 10 minutes. Boy, it was like a race, I tell you. Anyway,